Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome. This is the latest in my FreeThought Hour shows, which, as you know, some of you, it follows my Global Atheist News show, and I hope some of you will have an opportunity to watch that as well. While we're live at the moment, of course, this means that if you are watching, you can comment and you can ask questions, and I might screen them, and my guest and I might address them. So let's see, who is my guest? Here we go. Slew, how the devil are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine over here, thank you. You're another of my American victims. And as we were saying before we started streaming, the situation is quite different across the pond from here, because although we have an established church, with actual membership in the government and church in school and compulsory assemblies, and so we really do have a properly state and church mixture together. But this what this has meant is that they've lost their impetus, they've lost their mojo. There's no need for them to try and get their voice across, get heard, because they've already won it. And so they've gradually become more and more tepid, and their audience has drifted away. So if you go to a church here in the UK, a Church of England church on a Sunday, you'll find maybe in a great big, echoing centuries-old stone building, might go back to the Normans, but you'll find there's maybe 5 old age pensioners in there, and 3 of them are women, or maybe 4 of them are women, because the men have all died already. So anyway, it's different where you are. And so this is the first thing I would like you to do for my audience, is to tell us about your journey. How have you got to be today's Slucifer?
My, how much time do we have to wrap up 25 years or so? I guess I grew up in an independent Baptist church. They had a lot of it's Christian fundamentalism, Christian dominionism, things of that nature that are involved with that. I was pretty in deep with it through my childhood and growing up. Later in my teen years and everything, I'd even attended things like going to New Orleans for cleaning up the area after Hurricane Katrina had hit. We went to New York City, and we were handing out tracts there as well, and it was a lot of we got some negative feedback from some of that, of course. And but New York City, we handed out tracts on the subway, and they taught us magic tricks to do and stuff to go along with the gospel messages. And
what to capture an audience's attention.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we had a Awana club that I was part of too, and helped actually indoctrinate children. To my disappointment now, of course, it's something that still bothers me that I was part of that, But I started deconverting around 25, and I started listening to. I kind of started. My brother started helping me pick apart some things involved with Christianity and everything. The kind of hypocrisy and the different things said in there that contradict each other in the Bible, and really got me questioning things. And then he kept mentioning podcasts. I could never remember the names of them, and I ended up just kind of frantically searching one day. I downloaded a podcast streaming thing, and I'm like, I don't know anything about this. What do I search for? I can't remember the names he gave me. And there were things like Atheist Experience, and I couldn't think of that even.
Yes.
I put together like Secular and Sexuality. Didn't even know it was a podcast, but I put those terms together and started looking into that. And I ended up with Dr. Daryl Ray's podcast and started listening to that. And it kind of led to then finally listening to my brother a little bit more and him telling me some things. I'd look up the Atheist Experience, and then that answered a lot of questions and helped me. And
So your brother's the older member of the family, is he?
yes, he's 10 years older than me. He had joined the army right out of high school, and had gotten a little bit of a broader view on things from that, I believe.
Did he serve abroad?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was first stationed in Korea whenever he had gotten in. That was like in '97, I believe.
Yeah. Travel broadens the mind, doesn't it?
Yeah, and well, I guess, and in our age now, the internet can do that as well.
Yes.
Meeting people like you from overseas that I wouldn't normally get to interact with.
No.
Really broadens your perspective on things. Theremin trees was another one, and qualia soup that I started looking into that helped me a lot whenever I was deconverting and getting a grasp on things. But I joined a debate group on Facebook too, and that helped a lot because there was people from all over the world on there, and they were all. It was strange seeing the patterns in religions and the similarities and the differences, and being able to put those together and kind of be like. A lot of things like faith is a very similar epistemology throughout all of them. It seems that holds their thinking together.
Yeah,
which I relate to a lot.
I think you're being extremely generous calling it an epistemology.
Yes, I am. But well, I mean, it's a tool they're using to try to decipher truth, even though it might not be a good tool to be using. I do use that pretty loosely, but
yes. Well, you mentioned that you went to not St. Louis, where Katrina.
Well, I went to Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, not to be confused with Bay St. Louis, Missouri. Or St. Louis, Missouri, rather. This is, but it's still in the general area of the Gulf and near New Orleans and everything. Yeah.
Yes. And you did what might be called humanitarian work there, but it came with a condition.
Yeah, it came with invitations to their church and everything, and trying to proselytize these people or whatever. And a lot of them, they had just seen. Like, looking back at it now, it's just so disappointing to think about being part of that, because you'd see just these big pads, just these big concrete pads sitting in the middle of nothing, and it's like you'd see those throughout certain areas, and then you'd go down towards the shore, which made no sense, logically, to see these huge fancy houses with this stonework and things going all. Well, it was the rich people that were able to rebuild and didn't need government assistance to rebuild or anything.
Yeah.
So they weren't having any trouble with that.
And the pads were the footings or foundations
of the houses.
Of the timber structures that had all blown away.
Yeah, there were so many signs. I remember there was the things begging FEMA for help.
Yeah.
And they just weren't getting the help that they needed.
Yeah. And you feel a bit guilty now that your help came with strings.
I do. I remember one particular moment where there was a disabled woman that was there that had just been through all of the devastation and everything. And they actually had us kids that were helping work on this, help. We were helping do lawn work a lot of times, not just, small things that we could do to take care of. But, we had like this one couple, and they didn't want anything to do with us. I'm sure they had some choice words they were saying at the time that they didn't want, that the adults did not want us to hear or anything, and they separated us then from that, and they had a conversation, and then it was like not much longer that we had left completely. They didn't want us there.
So they were suspicious of your message, I suppose, and didn't want your help as a result of the way it was tainted.
If I had to guess, they'd heard the message before, and they had just seen the devastation of what, the supposed God could do. Yes. So it's like, what are you, if I was in that position, what would I be thinking? It would be, I wouldn't be too happy about it.
Yes. I've always wondered about what goes on inside the heads of people. Oh, we might be having. Did you? I
You
thought we
cut
had
out.
almost.
Moment.
Yeah. Could you hear what I was saying at that time when the connection was dodgy?
No. You
I'll
wondered what was in the minds of people, and then you cut out.
I see. Right. Yeah. So it's when survivors of a disaster like that, thank God, ignoring the fact that around them there's lots of bodies.
Yeah.
What's going on in their heads?
Yeah. I don't know. It's got to be very tough. It was tough for me just seeing it, even being in the church and stuff, and thinking that we're there helping and all of that. It was tough for me to see it, because there would be, what they would do after a natural disaster like that is all of these houses are run down and everything, and you'd see these big circles drawn in spray paint on all of the buildings, and they were divided in 4 sections, and some of them, like one section, I don't remember the exact how they designated those, but one was like for survivors, and one was for the number of people in the building or that lived there, and there was another one for, because they're still trying to sort out.
Yeah,
this was a good year or 2 years after the devastation had hit,
and they still were looking for missing people that hadn't been confirmed dead.
We were staying 5 miles or more inland, and that's where the seashells were. There were none on the beach. There was none there. There were there was that far in or even farther, there were boats in trees.
Yes.
Like they did not expect that to happen in that way, even though. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you should say this, bring this subject up in our show, because only earlier today I was having a little bit of an argument in Unbelievable, one of those Facebook groups that you were referring to, where you meet people.
Yeah.
And I was arguing with a Christian who was being very rude about donations. He thinks charity is all Christian.
Yeah.
And nobody who's not a Christian cares about anybody enough to donate any money. He was very rude. He says here, I'll read a bit about this to you. He says, atheism and secularism are such destructive forces for the human spirit. It utterly rots all that is good and decent in human beings. And he puts up a screenshot of some text which substantiates his view, his jaundiced view of non-believers. So I responded with, because we'd been talking about charity and who's generous and who's not. I responded with a list of, because over here in Europe, it's bad news to be associated with a religion. You know, nobody will give, or very few people will give to a cause that's got the label of a faith on it.
Yeah.
And that applies in politics as well. In America, if you want to get elected, you've got to at least pretend to be a Christian. In this country, if you want to be elected, do not mention religion, because that's going to lose you votes. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put up this about where charity comes from, and it's not Christianity, because for example, the Live Aid Marathon in 1985, completely faithless,
right,
raised more than $140 million. And that's in 1985, when that was a lot of money, you know. Over here, we have a couple of marathon telethons, and one of them in 2020 called Sport Relief, raised more than 40,540,355 pounds, not dollars, at the end of its live TV show. That's one TV show.
Oh, yes, but how many prayers is that?
Yeah, exactly. And the money is used to tackle issues including mental health, homelessness, and child poverty. And then we have another one, which is called Comic Relief, which is another telethon show. And that's been going for several years, probably 10 or 12 years. But in that time, it's raised a total of, let me get this right, 1,063,237,004 pounds. And these are atheist or secular charities. Right. So I was very pleased to be able to put him in his place.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is that even like the church that I was in, I remember actually having a conversation about not charity, but about government assistance and things of that nature, and why wouldn't we want these things funded? And he said that's for Christians to take care of as individuals. It has nothing to do with yeah. So they have this skewed view on things of that nature, and
yeah, government doesn't do welfare because
right.
the church does it. In theory, that's their idea. I understand.
Even though our church did not do anything for in our community or anything, they wouldn't even come together with other churches with similar beliefs because they had one belief that was different.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and if you look at how the church, it raises a lot of money. You know, people tithe to it and donate to the plate that gets passed around, the offertory plate or bag.
Oh, I got one here.
Have you? Oh, great. Well, they raise a lot of money, but how do they spend it? They certainly don't have open accounts. And if you look at their property, they are elaborate. Yeah, that's a good one. If you look at some of the cathedrals and mega churches, that's where the money goes. That and making the preacher rich and buying his fourth private jet,
right.
and that sort of thing. They may do a little bit of charity as window dressing, just to make it look as though they're decent people with ethical and moral attitudes. Makes me quite cross, to be honest.
The majority of things that they would, I don't know, we gave, even with it being a small church and everything in a rural area, they gave money to missionaries constantly.
Yes.
That was where the most of the money went to missions, and it went to
they think that's a worthy cause.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Anyway, let's get back to you, because you were telling us how you began to have doubts under the influence of your older brother, and so there's a bit of a gap there still, isn't there? How did you?
I had, like I said, I was going through like theremin trees and qualia soup and things of that nature, and kind of picking apart things for myself to try to figure things out.
Yeah.
That's the thing about like being indoctrinated into a religion most of your life, is that faith concept keeps you in there. And when you start breaking down that, you end up with, well, how are these all of my thoughts aren't being held together anymore. This was faith that was holding these things together. It was God. So what's my reasoning now? Because some of these things were okay that I had views on, and some of them weren't. So, creating a new epistemology for myself to try to decipher those things was difficult, and had me leaning towards humanism a good bit. And I started up a community, an Ohio Valley atheist community in this area, to try to find these people with like minds and get their views on these things that were going on, see if maybe we can do some things around the area.
Is that still running? Can people still join that?
Yeah, it's still up and it's still running. It's not an official organization or anything of that nature as far as being able to have.
How would people find you?
On Facebook, you can find the group is on there. We've COVID's taken its hit with it and TST for us, as far as being able to meet in person and all of that. And right while I was starting up the atheist community and trying to get things going with that in this area, it kind of fell apart. And the thing is, it's just Facebook's so finicky to begin with. If you aren't constantly advertising or constantly interacting, the algorithms take care of putting you at the bottom of the list on people's
Twitter's worse in that respect. Everything changes every minute.
Right. About all you can do is pay for advertising at that point and try to get things boosted back to where people are viewing it again. But from the humanism standpoint, I started seeing things in the news about TST, and at first I just kind of dismissed it as this is just craziness. I hadn't looked into any of the stuff being said. Like, I thought, well, they're believing in a devil, they're believing in all of these, just these are Christian things. Why are they doing this?
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Because the Christians have had 2,000 years of being able to having a microphone, effectively, getting their propaganda out there. And so they've managed to make all sorts of misconceptions popular, like atheists eat babies,
Right.
and Satanists are devil worshippers. And this, I'd like to talk to you a bit about this, because, of course, the devil isn't a Christian thing, really, is it? Because Jesus didn't. He had an encounter. Get behind me, Satan, in the desert when he was doing his 40 days and nights sojourn. But
I'd say it isn't. It's a Christian thing as far as modern Christianity goes, and all of that, and the way that Judaism, early Judaism didn't have it though.
No.
Zoroastrian belief started seeping its way into this religion through trade routes and things. So
I was going on to say that the Old Testament of the Christian Bible doesn't have any alter ego, any opposite to God. There's just the pure beneficial, except that he doesn't need to have a bad guy, somebody in the black cowboy hat, because he's bad enough himself.
Yeah. Oh, that's the manipulation that they use in that aspect is God can do no wrong, right? He doesn't ever have to be held accountable for the things that he does, and it's that way with authority and everything, which ties into our own political system. That I can see the similarities between that of appealing to authority constantly, to a corporate capitalist system. It's there to make money, and that's a good way to make money, is to keep your people ignorant, and to use the tactics that work best for getting their minds in the set of manipulating them, telling them that you're part of their family, you're part of the corporate family at blah blah blah, so you can And
there's so many parallels there, isn't there?
Yeah, I can see it a lot from my upbringing and being able to while breaking all of that down for myself, I saw a lot of similarities between the two. So it doesn't surprise me whenever Donald Trump, got to office and all of that. It didn't surprise me much at all. I was worried about it for a while.
And you're right. When you finally come to recognize, by having an older brother or picking up on how to criticize yourself, you're then left with a bit of a void, because what they've done to you is provide a lot of easy answers to the mysteries of life. And when you realize that those answers are wrong, you're then at the bottom of the hill, and you're going to start climbing again. And you find out that the real answers are not easy at all. Right. So it becomes a mountain.
It does. It becomes a lot to try to get through. And like for me personally, that it was Christian fundamentalism that I was growing up in, and that meant denying a lot of scientific things that other people I felt whenever I was coming out, I felt stunned, which I guess trauma does that anyways. It has a way of doing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
religious trauma would have that effect on you. But I was stunned in the way of, you know, believing in this new earth and things that I couldn't grasp evolution or anything. It was hard
Really?
to.
So you were brought up to believe in creationism
Yeah.
and a young Earth?
Yeah.
Really?
The
Wow.
the earth was made to look old,
Ah, yeah.
is what
Yeah.
we were.
God is a deceiver.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I'm not
No,
sure how
he's incapable of doing that. That's
I'm not sure how that makes him better, really.
right. Yeah.
Anyway, you touched on the devil, and I want to plumb into that a bit more because
Sure.
he's had a bad press, hasn't he? This guy.
Well, we've had, yeah, and like you said, there's been things that have happened that have skewed the view of what was actually going on here.
Mm,
We had the Satanic Panic and things of that nature, which is just another form of witch trials of what they could
mm,
get away with
mm.
here.
Yeah,
There were things documents and things being passed around even by the police here that were
yeah,
attributing
yeah,
mental illness and things of that nature and
yeah,
magic in general to Satanism,
yeah.
and
Mm,
using the Christian influence here, because we were, for the back in those times, we would have been about 80% Christian,
yeah,
the
yeah.
population. So yeah, Christianity of some sort. Of course, that gets
Mm,
branched out into other things, but
yeah.
um, yeah, that's, you know, it isn't that hard to convince people of things when they're already trained into that mindset to begin with.
Mm, mm,
Um, so, but things like, I mean, like LaVey, which we don't, in TST, we don't necessarily, which I'm not a spokesperson for TST or anything. I am a
no.
member, but I can't speak on their behalf, but I will tell my own
Um,
views
in,
on it.
in a minute, I'm going to ask you to tell my audience what TST stands for.
Okay. That's the Satanic Temple. So we have two of the most popular forms of Satanism here are Church of Satan and which is COS for short,
Mhm.
or TST, which is the Satanic Temple.
Hmm.
The Satanic Temple came about in like 2013. Church of Satan was LaVey's church that was in 1966. Is it? I'd sent you a graphic.
You did. Yeah, you're right. 1966.
Yeah. So we have a lot of, in that graphic, it detailed, which is on the Satanic Temple's website. You can find it, the satanictemple.com. You can find all of this information there.
I'll screen the graphic in a minute, but I wanted to mention, because you mentioned witchcraft and the sort of crossover between early Satanism as portrayed by believers,
Right.
which was congruent with witchcraft.
Yes.
And so I've got some up-to-date news about that, believe it or not,
Okay.
because it wasn't just in the US.
I know. Yeah.
This very week, we've had the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, make an announcement that she's going to formally apologize to people who were accused of witchcraft between the 16th and 18th centuries. Many of whom were executed. I'm not sure what good it'll do them.
I don't know. It seems like they should. I don't know. Maybe give the family members of that some kind of incentive for, you know, if they're truly sincere about their apology.
It might give very remote descendants. We're talking about, a gap
Right.
of 300 and 500 years.
Yeah.
It might give some very remote descendants who probably don't know that they had an ancestor who was captured as a witch.
Right.
It might give them some, what you Americans call closure, but I doubt that it's going to have a very big effect personally.
No.
Anyway, apparently about 4,000 Scots, most of them women, were accused of breaking the Witchcraft Act back then between 1563 and 1736. So she's taken it upon herself to pardon them. There you go.
Wow. Pardon them.
Well, apologize for the way
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say pardon them would be quite ironic in that sense, but yeah.
Yes. I suspect that this is a way of a politician getting coverage more than anything else.
Right.
But there, I'm a very suspicious person, at least as far as politicians are concerned.
It is funny you bring that up though, because we have a ritual that's coming up, I believe, called Hexanov, that has to do with remembering those lives that were lost during that time.
Let me screen this this guide that you sent me.
Okay.
We can talk about this. And if viewers are looking at this video with a full screen, they may be able to read it. But I'm going to have to use my...
I'm on full screen right now. I can see it pretty well. So.
Yeah, good. It's handwritten, which doesn't help with the
clarity.
So there you've got the left. There's 6 columns, isn't there? And column 2 and column 3, 4, 5 are the Satanic Temple, TST. And column 3 and 6 are the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
And they are relatively recent. They both of them, neither of them go back to biblical times.
Right.
But the COS, the Church of Satan, is a 1966 origin, whereas the one that you are in as a member is quite recent. It's 2013, so not 10 yet.
Right.
So would you like to talk us through some of those differences?
Sure. What is there anything specific you'd like me to touch on with that?
Well, I know that if we've got some Christian viewers, they will be expecting all sorts of heinous connotations attached to these organizations, because that's what they've been told to think.
Yeah, I'd say the least. I mean, as far as that goes, LaVey was guilty of some heinous things concerning, which you can find on the website as well. It goes into further explanation down below this chart on there. But they talk about some of the things that LaVey was portraying as far as it goes with equal rights to the LGBT community and everything. And he was against that equality. There were some very poor views that we don't subscribe to. I don't know. Church of Satan holds LaVey to a higher standard than what we would.
Well, isn't this interesting, though? Because if you speak to a Christian, they'll tell you that the reason that you're not one of them and that you maybe worship the dark side is because you want to sin and commit all of these sexual activities that they don't approve of.
See, it's actually it's a thing of, and let me be clear, neither one of the Church of Satan or TST are eating babies or making, sacrifices of any sort of that. We leave that to the Christian Bible to have those things, the blood sacrifices and all of that. But getting back to that, your remark, we don't. It's actually a thing of the dualism, and the thing of like rebelling against that authoritative figure, the way that Lucifer did in the Bible. If you read it as a more symbolic thing rather than the text that it gets read as fact by Christians as. It's actually taking the symbolism of rebelling against that authority and oppression being done by the God and by the church, and it's making it a positive thing for us that we're here to rebel against that.
Well, I'm all for kicking against authority. I think that all of the religions are very authoritarian, and that's no recommendation in my book.
Yeah, and that's something that we lack in ours. Is it's not that. LaVey did have that aspect in his writings, I believe. So there are some distinct differences down through that list that you can see that it's a funny one that they throw in. Believes men who prefer blue cheese dressing must be homosexually inclined because the odor is reminiscent of a locker room.
I like the fact that neither group believes in an actual Satan, which of course is very confounding for the Christians who would define you by belief in a Satan.
Yeah, that was the thing too. Atheists at the time were being referred to as Satanists anyways. They were put right in line with devil worshipping. Anything that was outside of Christianity was demonized.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things. It was more of a symbolic thing of taking that and railing against those things. And they did not pay attention to the satire being presented to them at all. That still seems to baffle them whenever you present them with satire or
Yes, satire, irony, and stuff like that.
You guys had a lot of that in your own aspect over there with the comedy and stuff that I enjoy.
Yes. We historically, I mean, when I say historically, I'm talking about early days of television. Yeah. We had some fantastic church knocking comedians who wore their collar backwards and stood up at a pulpit. And
even your literature had a way of sneaking things in that way. Early literature, it's amazing.
Yeah. There's not a lot of respect over here for the church.
Right.
But more recently, of course, with the woke culture, it's become increasingly difficult for a comedian he's got to tread more carefully now for fear of offending people, which is ridiculous,
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think here we have a lot of people that don't like change and that they don't want to go along with some more progressive views on things, and they want to stay stunted in that mindset. But usually these are people that have plenty of wealth and things, and they'll cry things about their freedoms being infringed upon while they're using their freedoms to do it. Yes. So it's quite the awkward thing to be saying.
For them, freedom actually means what we would call a privilege.
Right.
They want to protect their privilege.
Yeah.
But I can think of Dave Allen, an Irish comedian, who was very irreverent, although he never actually said that he was an atheist until probably in the final interview before he died. But he was coming from a papist country, a Roman Catholic country. He was very rude about the Pope and monks and all that side of religion. So it goes back a long way.
Yeah.
Rowan Atkinson is another one.
I'm not too familiar. Rowan Atkinson, that's Mr. Bean, isn't it?
Mr. Bean. Yeah. But before he became Mr. Bean, he did quite a lot of stand-up stuff. And he's got, if you search for him being a vicar, he's got some fantastic mock preaching from a pulpit, mock sermons that are well worth watching. I recommend them.
Okay. I'll have to. I haven't seen any of his earlier stuff. I'd watched a lot of the. Well, I mean, newer as in what, the 80s and 90s, I believe. He was pretty prominent with his show and everything. I'd watched some of that.
Yeah. Mm.
His movies after.
Yeah, yeah. He is a national treasure. So
I enjoyed Stephen Fry personally. Fry and Laurie and all of that. That was
yes. Well, Fry has been very. He wouldn't call it offensive, but he's been very unkind about God, in particular. A really good interview where you could see on the face of the Irish interviewer the shock and amazement at what was being said by his guest.
Some very good debates and stuff that he got into as well.
Yes. Yeah. So you're in the TST because presumably you disagree with a couple of ticks that are in the COS boxes.
Yeah, our tenets are even completely different. Whereas COS subscribes to the 11 satanic rules of the earth, I believe, is their actual structure for things. We have 7 tenets, which aren't the same as that. Our tenets are based more around humanism and more, which theirs are sort of, but there's some aspects to them that aren't quite the same as us. Ours are just very humanistic and nothing that was the thing. There wasn't anything that I disagreed with. It's like I already abide by these tenets as a humanist. Why, okay, I'm a Satanist then.
Well, I sometimes get asked, because I get invited to speak to humanists in the humanist groups up and down the country.
Yeah.
And I'm president of the Atheism UK. And I have to explain what the difference is between atheism and humanism. And I always say, and I'm going to ask you what you think the difference is between Satanism and humanism in a minute. That's what I'm leading up to.
Okay.
But I always say that humanism seems to me to be for atheists who want to join something, which is a bit like a church. Because you can have a celebrant come to marry you or bury you or bless your child or whatever. And atheism doesn't offer that. Atheism is more about wanting no interference by faith. It's freedom from faith rather than freedom to worship whatever you like. We're after a secular world. That's what we want.
Okay. You want my views on that? For Satanism?
I'd like to know where you think you could draw a line between Satanism and humanism.
Okay. So, and to me, that's, I don't know. Humanism would be a different category in itself of that our tenets and everything are humanistic. We go more into religious rituals and community gatherings, things that are a little bit more specific to a religion rather than what humanism would.
Right.
That's the only real difference that I see in it. We get a little bit more political in activism and things to combat the things that Christians have put into law and that they enforce here. For example, one of the more prominent issues has been the abortions here, which that was just in the news not that long ago. It's just been this past week that in Idaho, there was a case with that where, and I don't know, did you see that footage? The woman that was speaking there was a Satanist with TST.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I'll have to send you that at some point.
Please. I'd like to see that.
But they were speaking about we have a ritual that they've established to sorry, I want to lose my train of thought. I have some of this written down to kind of go to because I get
Sure.
scattered a little bit after talking about my religious upbringing and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but the abortion ritual that we've established in TST, or the TST's established, I can't. Me as being a part of TST is where I'm saying we, but it grants religious exemptions that the Christian church gets to take advantage of their religious exemptions here because of their beliefs. So it grants religious exemptions to us to bypass a lot of the abortion laws that are put in place here in the States.
I see.
So,
Right.
like normally, if the laws have things that which does happen throughout the country, and I believe with Idaho in particular, they do go by some of these things. I don't know if it's all of them or not, but there's mandatory waiting periods for abortions. There's requirements that practitioners withhold. Okay, there's requirements that practitioners withhold certain medical info that might go against,
The religious
having
belief. Yeah. Yeah.
compulsory counseling prior to abortions. They require reading materials that would try to persuade people not to.
Yeah.
Medically unnecessary sonograms, so that they get an attachment to the fetus and all of that. And
Yes. Yes.
mandatory listening to the fetal heartbeat, compulsory burial or cremation of fetal remains. And we're staking this claim on this being against our tenets, that one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. So we're able to use that to have this ritual and everything. And the ritual is nothing more than really a self, like a self-affirmation of sorts. And to try to kind of get the person to get in a relaxed mindset and stuff, similar to what meditation would be or whatever. And because that's a traumatic thing when you have Christians telling you that you're being sinful and that you're going to hell and that you're all these things over,
they're making an emotional appeal.
Yes. So it's that's what the ritual basically consists of, and that's one of the ways that we're kind of fighting against those things.
Well, it certainly needs doing, because in Texas, for example, as I'm sure you know, they have introduced a law which enables anybody who's involved in an abortion, and this could mean parents who of the woman who wishes to have the abortion for supporting her, or it could even involve the person who drives her to the clinic. They're making it so that if the date has gone past 6 weeks, those people can actually be prosecuted and fined up to, I think, $1,000 by anyone. Not just authorities, but anybody can bring a case.
That's also where the mandatory waiting periods end up taking their toll in that, because by the time the waiting period's over, then they're past the date for the abortion. It's illegal to fucking have it. So it's like, sorry about that. I didn't mean to.
Yes. But the thing about the 6-week deadline is many women wouldn't know they were even pregnant then.
Right. Yeah.
So it's effectively.
I know people.
Birth.
I have a daughter, and that is one of the biggest things that irks me. It worries me over her future here. That she doesn't even. She's an object. She's property, basically, under the laws that they're drawing up.
No control over her own body.
Right. It shouldn't be. Even for women here to get their tubes tied, they call it.
Mm.
They there are, I mean, the states around this area, they will require them to be of a certain age to make that decision.
Mm.
Usually like menopausal or whatever at that point, so it doesn't
Yes.
matter anyway.
Yes.
And or they'll make it to where if they have a husband, then it has to be, he's got to okay it.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
So, as you say, she is a property of him.
yeah, very archaic,
Very medieval. Yeah.
hmm
Or Muslim, because of course that's still the fact in more fundamentalist Muslim countries where
yeah.
women are only allowed out with male accompaniment and in a portable cage, the burqa, So
It's Abrahamic. They get their information from the same place.
Yeah. Mm. So you're right. You're definitely right about that. That's something that does need combating. Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
And you've got a YouTube channel to do that, haven't you?
Yes.
Yep.
I have
So
the
tell us
Skeptical
about that.
Satanist. I have the Skeptical Satanist on YouTube. I'm still working on getting back up and going. I had some medical issues come into play. During COVID, I ended up changing jobs and things, and I've still had a little bit of a rough start getting back into things and trying to keep up on news and everything since then.
Mm. Mm. So you can have this video, of course, to put up on your YouTube channel.
All right. Nice. I appreciate that.
No problem. Yeah. We want to get it seen. That's the point.
Yeah.
So you've got a daughter, you mentioned. I mean, so have I. I've got two daughters who are just a little way away from me here. And I'm interested to know whether you're going to bring your children up in Satanism.
Yeah, as far as the I'm not going to force her into any religion or anything, but the actual tenets and everything, I will be at least informing her of the things and trying to help her understand things a bit better. She's very young right now, so there's plenty of time for that. It's nothing that I wouldn't try to talk about these things to a young child anyway.
No,
it's
not appropriate.
No,
they are not sexual beings at a very early age. Yeah. And let me tell you, when they get to be preteen, they're much more of a problem.
Well, yeah.
I'll share that with you. So the thing that interests me is the whole common idea of the devil, Diabolo, Satan, hell, Dante's Inferno, and those little red creatures with tridents that he's supposed to have. What are they called to help him? That's
pitchforks.
Yeah. That's all a nonsense, then, isn't it? So this is modern day Satanism we're talking about.
Yeah, I believe most of those visuals did come from Dante's Inferno and literature at that time. What was it, the Divine Comedy or whatever? Did that go into it as well? It was another of Dante's writings, I think.
Yeah. But he was 13th or 14th century, a long time ago. And his influence rumbles along still, doesn't it?
Right.
Amazing.
It's amazing the way that the things that the church does, kind of the martyrdom and things that they use in it. It attracts people in that sense.
Yes.
Like whenever I was talking about cancel culture, it's something that I see similar with that, where the person's martyring themselves over something. And I see that as transitioning between that and politics here as well. Is that I don't know what it is about it, but it's something, I guess, making other people feel sorry for you by you feeling sorry for yourself and making it a public spectacle of sorts. Kind of plays into people's emotions and kind of sucks them in that way.
Mm. It's big in Islam, of course, isn't it?
Yeah.
Martyrdom, and it's the some of the thinking behind suicide bombing and all the atrocities that they perform. I read recently that there was an attack on a mosque in Pakistan this week, and a bomber killed himself and 61 other people because he was a Sunni and the mosque was a Shia. So makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Not.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So we ought to lighten up a bit, really, after all, this fairly dark note. So how do you see Satanism, the modern version of it, TST, developing? Do you think it's going to catch on more? Do you think there's going to be, is it a growth area? Will the graph go up?
I hope so. I hope that that we develop a good structure to be able to have that growth and keep it under control in a way. You know, you get crazies from all over in every religion that you don't necessarily want representing what you're trying to do when it's more humanist related things.
That's interesting. You think it's a religion then?
What, Satanism? As far as it goes, as it depends on how you define religion. As far as our courts are concerned, they've defined it as a religion. It has I would agree in the aspect of it's got its own rituals, it's got its own tenets, it's got its own structure to and community of people gathering together for a purpose.
Regularly? So, is there a Sabbath?
No. No, we have monthly meetings currently.
Yeah.
Zoom, since it's been, or Zoom adjacent type. Meetings.
Yeah. Nicely socially distanced.
Yeah.
So that makes me think about what used to be called the Atheist Church. Very briefly, it was at the beginning it was called the Atheist Church, and then it realized that that wasn't a good name and it's renamed itself what do they call themselves now? It's community. It's a sort of non-believing. I forget what the name of it is now, but they dropped Atheist Church. I don't know if there's anybody in our speech who will, in our viewers, that would remember the name. The Sunday Assembly. That's what I'm trying to think of. You know, you've heard of them, have you?
Yeah, we have one around here. I didn't, and this is the thing. I would be a part of that, and I wouldn't mind even working with them doing, charity or whatever, or to fundraise for whatever. They seem like good people, and it seems like a good community and everything. But as far as for me personally, it was a little bit too much of the similar aspects of the church structure that I grew up in to really get on board with it too much.
Yeah. Well, I know the people who set that up. I've met them. Although one of them's moved on now. Pippa's moved on. But the other guy is still sort of head of it. And they were comedians. And what they were trying to do was to provide the nice bits of church, which, we miss if we stop believing and don't attend services anymore. And so that meant singing, so that they gather together to sing popular songs, not religious songs. And listening to somebody talking about something wise, and then they have a couple of cakes each. I've been to one of their events.
It really wasn't bad. Like they had some scientists there that were talking about Mars rovers and things. Whenever I was there, it was very enjoyable in that sense. It was just
but they stepped away from the atheist label now, because they won't have me go and speak to them because I come with that label.
Oh, really? I don't know I haven't checked on them lately here to see if they're. I don't know. Are they? Have they done that globally, or is that?
I don't think so. No, it's just probably
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, Slewsifer.
Yeah.
You've been as fantastic as I knew you would be. And I just want to mention that next week I've got another interesting guest in the form of, who is it next week? I think it's Luna next week, who is, let me just see. Yes, I think it's Luna next week. And she is going to talk to us. She's a very interesting lady. And she's a ghost writer. She doesn't mean she writes about ghosts. It means she writes and somebody else takes the credit for it. Anyway, she's coming on my show next week, so be sure to come and watch that. And thank you very much for watching this. Those of you in the future who will see it when it's a podcast, thank you once again, Slew. And I'm going to apologize because I misspelt your name in the outro.
That's fine. Thanks for having me on. I always end my podcast with Hail Satan and Hail Yourself, meaning, and usually I'll throw in the Hail Yourself because that is what I'm meaning by saying Hail Satan. You're hailing yourself. You're taking care of yourself.
Right.
Take care, basically. So
yeah. Well, thank you for
yourself.
That.
Yeah.
You remind me of David, the comedian I mentioned earlier, the Irish comedian. His name's gone, but he used to finish by saying, "And may your God go with you."